Bohemian Grove. Secrets, Power, and the World's Most Exclusive Retreat. Part 1. Hidden among the towering redwood forests of Northern California lies one of the most private gathering places in the world. For most of the year, the forest is quiet. Ancient trees rise hundreds of feet into the sky. Sunlight filters through the branches. The only sounds are birdsong, flowing water, and the wind moving gently through the redwoods. Then, for a few weeks each summer, the silence changes. Hundreds of influential men begin arriving. Private aircraft land at nearby airports. Luxury vehicles disappear into winding forest roads. Security increases. The gates close. And one of the world's most exclusive gatherings begins. To some, it is simply a private social club. A summer retreat where successful people relax away from public attention. To others, it is one of the most mysterious places in America. A location surrounded by rumors of secret meetings, hidden influence, and powerful individuals shaping the future behind closed doors. This place is known as Bohemian Grove. For more than a century, it has fascinated journalists, historians, conspiracy theorists, politicians, and the general public alike. Some believe world-changing decisions have been made beneath its giant redwood trees. Others argue that the stories have been greatly exaggerated. Like many famous mysteries, the truth lies somewhere between documented history and public speculation. This documentary explores both. Our goal is not to promote conspiracy theories, nor is it to dismiss legitimate questions. Instead, we will examine the documented history of Bohemian Grove, the traditions of the Bohemian Club, the influential people who have attended, and the many stories that have surrounded the organization for generations. Along the way, we will carefully separate verified facts from rumors, allowing you to decide what conclusions the evidence supports. To understand why Bohemian Grove has become so famous, we must first travel back to the city where it all began. San Francisco. The year was 1872. America was changing rapidly. The Civil War had ended only a few years earlier. Railroads connected the nation. Industry expanded at an astonishing pace. California, fueled by the gold rush, had transformed into one of the fastest-growing regions in the United States. San Francisco had become a bustling port city filled with entrepreneurs, artists, journalists, musicians, lawyers, and businessmen. Among them was a small group of creative individuals looking for something different. They wanted a place where writers, painters, actors, musicians, and journalists could gather socially. Away from work. Away from politics. Away from everyday responsibilities. They founded an organization known as the Bohemian Club. The name Bohemian reflected the 19th century idea of artists and intellectuals living unconventional, creative lives. It did not refer to the historical region of Bohemia in Central Europe. Rather, it symbolized artistic freedom. At first, the club consisted primarily of newspaper reporters, authors, actors, and musicians. Meetings focused on friendship, conversation, music, literature, and theatrical performances. The atmosphere was informal, creative, relaxed. As the years passed, however, the membership began to change. Successful businessmen joined. Prominent attorneys, military officers, political leaders, industrialists. Eventually, presidents. The club gradually evolved from an organization of artists into one that included many of the most influential figures in American society. Yet one tradition remained constant. Every summer, members sought an escape from city life. They wanted nature, fresh air, camping, music, storytelling around campfires. The first summer outings were modest. Small gatherings in wooded areas outside San Francisco. Members cooked meals together, performed plays, sang songs, read poetry. The annual retreat quickly became one of the club's most cherished traditions. Eventually, the organization purchased a permanent location, a magnificent stretch of redwood forest in Sonoma County, California. Covering approximately 2,700 acres, the property became known as Bohemian Grove. The land itself is breathtaking. Some of the giant coastal redwoods are centuries old, towering more than 250 feet above the forest floor. Walking beneath them creates an overwhelming sense of scale. Many visitors describe the grove as peaceful, almost cathedral-like. It is easy to understand why the founders fell in love with the location. Nature dominates everything. Modern life seems very far away. Over time, the annual encampment became increasingly elaborate. Temporary camps evolved into permanent camp areas. Outdoor theaters were constructed. Dining facilities expanded. Ceremonies developed. Traditions emerged. By the early 20th century, Bohemian Grove had become one of America's most exclusive private retreats. Membership itself became highly selective. Prospective members often waited many years before receiving an invitation. Guests could attend only if invited by members. The organization maintained strict privacy. That privacy would eventually become one of its defining characteristics. It is important to understand that private organizations are not unusual. Golf clubs, social clubs, professional associations, academic societies. Many operate with limited public access. Bohemian Grove differs primarily because of who attends. Throughout its history, numerous presidents of the United States have visited. Cabinet officials, Supreme Court justices, military commanders, corporate executives, scientists, artists, authors, musicians. The combination of powerful individuals gathering privately naturally attracted public attention. Questions soon followed. What exactly happens during these meetings? Are major political decisions discussed? Do business leaders negotiate important agreements? Do presidents seek advice? Or is the gathering simply a summer vacation among friends? The answers are more complicated than many people imagine. Former members generally describe the Grove as a place where normal social hierarchies temporarily relax. Business suits disappear. Members wear casual clothing. Formal titles are largely ignored. Entertainment replaces official schedules. Many insist that business discussions are discouraged. The club even has an informal motto: "Weaving spiders come not here." The phrase, borrowed from Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, is commonly interpreted as a reminder to leave business dealings outside the Grove. Whether everyone always follows that principle has been debated, but it remains an important part of the club's tradition. As the 20th century progressed, secrecy surrounding the Grove grew. Few photographs appeared. Journalists rarely gained access. Public curiosity increased. Whenever powerful people meet privately, speculation inevitably follows. By the 1960s and 1970s, Bohemian Grove had become the subject of newspaper investigations, books, television documentaries, and eventually, internet conspiracy theories. Some claims were grounded in documented events. Others expanded into extraordinary stories involving secret governments, occult rituals, and hidden world control. Sorting fact from fiction would become increasingly difficult. Yet one thing remained certain. Bohemian Grove had become far more than a private campground. It had become a symbol. To supporters, it represented tradition, friendship, and privacy. To critics, it represented elite privilege and secrecy. To conspiracy theorists, it became something far more mysterious. Before exploring those competing interpretations, we must first understand the organization behind the Grove itself. Who founded the Bohemian Club? Why did artists and journalists create it? And how did a small literary society evolve into one of the most exclusive private clubs in America? The answers reveal a history far more fascinating than many people realize. Part 2. To understand Bohemian Grove, we must first understand the organization that created it. The Bohemian Club. Today, its name is recognized around the world. Yet when it was founded in 1872, few could have imagined what it would eventually become. The story begins in San Francisco. The city was booming. The California gold rush had transformed a quiet coastal settlement into one of America's fastest-growing commercial centers. Ships arrived daily. Railroads connected the West Coast with the rest of the nation. Banks, newspapers, theaters, and businesses flourished. The atmosphere was energetic, optimistic, creative. San Francisco also possessed a vibrant artistic community. Writers, actors, journalists, painters, musicians. Many worked long hours covering politics, business, and the rapidly changing city. After work, they gathered in restaurants, cafes, and saloons to exchange ideas. It was from these informal gatherings that the Bohemian Club emerged. Its founders were primarily newspaper reporters. At the time, journalism was a demanding profession. Newspapers competed fiercely for readers. Reporters often worked late into the night. The club offered something different. A place where creative people could relax together. The organization adopted the name Bohemian because 19th-century society often used the word to describe artists who lived unconventional lives. The term suggested imagination, freedom, creativity, a willingness to challenge tradition. The early club reflected those values. Members staged theatrical productions, performed music, read poetry, shared stories, laughed together. Formal business meetings were almost an afterthought. Entertainment came first. One early motto captured this spirit perfectly. Weaving spiders come not here. The phrase comes from Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream. In the play, it suggests leaving work behind. Within the Bohemian Club, the saying became a reminder that business and professional concerns should remain outside. Inside the club, friendship and creativity came first. The early membership reflected that philosophy. Newspaper editors, illustrators, novelists, actors, composers. Many possessed modest incomes. Some struggled financially. What united them was not wealth. It was imagination. As San Francisco expanded, however, the city's successful businessmen became increasingly interested in the club. Industrialists admired the artistic atmosphere. Lawyers appreciated the intellectual conversations. Bankers enjoyed escaping formal business life. Gradually, membership diversified. Artists remained important. But they were soon joined by influential leaders from nearly every profession. Some historians describe this transition as natural. Others believe it fundamentally changed the organization. By the end of the 19th century, the Bohemian Club had become a meeting place where creativity and influence coexisted. One tradition helped strengthen friendships among members. Every summer, they left the city. The first outings were simple camping trips. Members traveled by boat or train to wooded areas north of San Francisco. They pitched tents, cooked meals over open fires, performed amateur plays beneath the trees. Music echoed through the forest. Poetry readings continued late into the evening. The atmosphere resembled a family camping vacation far more than an exclusive gathering of powerful individuals. As attendance increased, members sought a permanent location. After considering several possibilities, the club eventually purchased a magnificent redwood property along the Russian River in Sonoma County. The location proved ideal. Ancient coastal redwoods dominated the landscape. Some trees had already stood for more than 1,000 years. Streams wound quietly through the forest. The natural beauty inspired awe. The annual encampment soon became the highlight of the club calendar. Each summer, members returned. Temporary tents gradually gave way to permanent camps. Trails were improved. Outdoor stages appeared. Dining facilities expanded. The Grove slowly developed into a unique community existing only a few weeks each year. Members organized themselves into individual camps. Each adopted its own personality. Some emphasized music. Others storytelling. Some specialized in elaborate meals. Others focused on humor. The camps developed names, traditions, and friendly rivalries. Many members returned to the same camp year after year, forming lifelong friendships. One feature particularly distinguished the Grove: entertainment. The Bohemian Club possessed remarkable artistic talent. Actors performed original plays. Professional musicians gave concerts. Large outdoor productions combined orchestras, elaborate costumes, and dramatic lighting. These performances became increasingly sophisticated. Visitors often compared them to Broadway productions staged beneath giant redwood trees. The Grove's natural amphitheaters created unforgettable settings. Imagine sitting beneath trees hundreds of feet tall while an orchestra performs under the stars. It remains one of the defining experiences described by former attendees. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the Bohemian Club continued attracting increasingly prominent members. Business leaders joined. Military officers. University presidents. Scientists. Judges. Eventually, national political figures. One reason may have been the club's emphasis on equality during the encampment. At least in theory. Within the Grove, titles mattered less. Presidents dined alongside artists. Corporate executives shared campfires with musicians. Formal hierarchy temporarily softened. Whether reality always matched this ideal is another question. Still, the tradition became an important part of the club's identity. Membership itself remained highly selective. Candidates typically required sponsorship from existing members. Waiting lists sometimes stretched for years. Even after receiving an invitation, prospective members underwent careful evaluation. The organization preferred individuals who would contribute positively to the club's culture. This exclusivity gradually enhanced the Grove's reputation. The more difficult membership became, the greater public curiosity grew. Who belonged? What happened there? Why such secrecy? It is worth noting that privacy was not unique to the Bohemian Club. Many exclusive organizations maintained closed memberships during the 19th century. Gentlemen's clubs were common throughout Europe and America. Universities operated private societies. Professional organizations limited attendance. Bohemian Grove differed because of the extraordinary influence many members eventually acquired. When future presidents, cabinet officials, military commanders, and business leaders gather privately, people naturally become curious. Curiosity eventually turned into suspicion. By the early 20th century, newspaper articles occasionally questioned what occurred inside the Grove. Most reports described theatrical performances, concerts, speeches, and outdoor recreation. Others hinted that powerful individuals might also discuss national affairs. The truth appears more nuanced. The club officially discouraged business negotiations. Yet it would be unrealistic to imagine that influential people never discussed important issues while spending weeks together. Friendships naturally lead to conversations. Conversations sometimes influence future decisions. Whether those discussions amounted to secret policymaking remains one of the central debates surrounding Bohemian Grove. Another feature that captured public attention was the club's symbolism. The owl. Large owl imagery appeared throughout the Grove, eventually culminating in one of its most famous traditions, a ceremony known as the Cremation of Care. Photographs of the enormous owl statue would later circulate around the world. To some observers, it represented nothing more than theatrical symbolism. To others, it became evidence of hidden rituals. Few aspects of Bohemian Grove have generated more speculation. Understanding what the ceremony actually involves and how it has been interpreted over the decades is essential to separating documented tradition from sensational mythology. That remarkable story begins beneath the giant owl itself. Part 3. Among the towering redwoods of Bohemian Grove, one image stands above all others. A massive stone owl, standing approximately 40 feet tall, silent, motionless, watching over the forest. For generations, this single statue has become one of the most recognizable symbols associated with Bohemian Grove. To club members, it represents tradition. To critics, it has often represented secrecy. To conspiracy theorists, it has become something far more mysterious. Few images connected with Bohemian Grove have generated more speculation. Yet understanding the owl requires understanding the ceremony performed before it. Known as the Cremation of Care. Every summer, shortly after the annual encampment begins, members gather beside a small lake within the grove. As darkness falls, music fills the forest. Torches illuminate the pathways. Actors dressed in elaborate costumes emerge from the trees. An orchestra performs. Narrators recite dramatic passages. Boats glide slowly across the water. At the center of the ceremony stands the giant owl. Eventually, a symbolic figure known as Care is presented. In the performance, Care represents worry, stress, responsibility, the burdens of everyday life. The figure is ceremonially cremated, symbolizing the temporary release of worldly concerns. The message is straightforward. For the duration of the encampment, members are encouraged to leave behind business pressures and enjoy friendship, nature, music, and recreation. According to the Bohemian Club, the ceremony is entirely symbolic. A theatrical tradition. No different in principle from elaborate pageants performed by universities, fraternal organizations, or historical societies. Former members have frequently described it as a playful opening ceremony rather than a religious event. The owl itself has a similar explanation. Within the club, the owl traditionally symbolizes wisdom. The image traces back to Athena, the ancient Greek goddess associated with wisdom, learning, and strategy. Owls have represented knowledge for thousands of years in Western culture. Libraries, universities, academic organizations, all have used owl imagery. For club members, the statue reflects that tradition. Yet not everyone accepts this interpretation. Beginning in the late 20th century, photographs and video of the ceremony began circulating publicly. To individuals unfamiliar with its history, the combination of robes, torches, dramatic music, and the enormous owl appeared unusual. Some observers associated the imagery with ancient religious rituals. Others suggested occult symbolism. Internet discussions soon expanded these claims into elaborate conspiracy theories. One frequently repeated allegation links the owl to Moloch, an ancient deity mentioned in historical and biblical texts. According to this theory, the owl represents a hidden object of worship. Historians strongly dispute this claim. There is no credible evidence that the Bohemian Club identifies the owl as Moloch or conducts religious ceremonies devoted to any ancient deity. Club publications consistently describe the owl as a symbol of wisdom used for theatrical purposes. The Moloch connection appears to have originated through later interpretations rather than documented club history. This illustrates an important lesson about Bohemian Grove. Images often acquire meanings very different from those originally intended. Once photographs spread beyond their original context, viewers naturally interpret them through their own beliefs. Some see harmless pageantry. Others perceive hidden symbolism. Context becomes essential. Another source of public fascination involves the elaborate production staged throughout the grove. The Cremation of Care is only one example. For more than a century, members have presented original plays, musical performances, orchestral concerts, and dramatic pageants. Professional composers have written music specifically for the Grove. Artists designed costumes. Architects constructed temporary stages. Lighting specialists transformed the forest into an outdoor theater. These productions often rivaled major theatrical performances. Many well-known actors, musicians, and writers contributed over the years. Former attendees frequently described the artistic performances as among the highlights of the encampment. This creative tradition reflects the club's original identity. Long before presidents and business leaders attended, the Bohemian Club existed primarily as an organization of artists. That heritage remains visible in its annual productions. Still, one question continues arising. If the Grove truly exists only for recreation, why have so many powerful people attended? Throughout its history, the guest lists have included an extraordinary collection of influential figures. Several presidents of the United States attended before or during their political careers. Cabinet officials, members of Congress, governors, military commanders, chief executives of major corporations, leaders from finance, energy, technology, media, and academia. Not everyone attended simultaneously. Membership changed continually over the decades. Nevertheless, the cumulative list is remarkable. This naturally leads to another important distinction. Attending Bohemian Grove does not imply membership in a secret political organization. Many individuals have visited only once as invited guests. Others attended regularly for years. Some became members. Others declined invitations altogether. Historical records indicate considerable variation in participation. One frequently cited historical example concerns the Manhattan Project. During the summer of 1942, before the United States developed the first atomic bomb, physicist Ernest Lawrence reportedly introduced J. Robert Oppenheimer to military and government officials at the Grove. Subsequent discussions helped lead to Oppenheimer's appointment as scientific director of the Manhattan Project. Historians generally regard this as a documented example of important networking occurring in connection with Bohemian Grove. However, it does not mean the Manhattan Project itself was planned or directed at the Grove. The formal decisions occurred through the United States government. The Grove simply provided an environment where influential individuals met socially. This example illustrates a broader point. Networking matters. Throughout history, relationships formed in informal settings have often influenced later professional decisions. Golf courses, universities, military academies, professional conferences, private clubs. Human relationships naturally shape future opportunities. Recognizing this does not require assuming hidden conspiracies. It reflects ordinary social behavior. Still, when extremely influential individuals gather privately year after year, questions inevitably follow. How much influence do those relationships carry? Can conversations held around campfires eventually affect national policy? Where does ordinary networking end and undue influence begin? These questions have no simple answers. Critics argue that organizations bringing together political leaders and corporate executives inevitably raise concerns about transparency. Supporters respond that private citizens, including public officials acting in personal capacities, also deserve places where they can relax without constant public scrutiny. The tension between privacy and accountability remains central to the Bohemian Grove debate. As the 20th century progressed, journalists increasingly attempted to learn what happened behind the Grove's gates. Most found remarkably little. The club maintained strict privacy. Photography remained limited. Guests rarely spoke publicly about their experiences. This silence only increased public curiosity. Eventually, investigators, reporters, and activists began attempting to uncover what actually occurred during the annual encampment. Some produced careful historical investigations. Others promoted extraordinary claims unsupported by evidence. Sorting reliable reporting from sensationalism became increasingly difficult. The next chapter explores those investigations, the documented criticisms, and the controversies that transformed Bohemian Grove from an obscure private retreat into one of America's most discussed and misunderstood exclusive organizations. Part 4. For many decades, Bohemian Grove attracted relatively little national attention. Most Americans had never heard of it. The annual encampment remained a quiet tradition among its members. Occasionally, newspapers mentioned the club. Travel writers described the magnificent redwood forest. Society pages noted that prominent businessmen or politicians had attended. Beyond that, public interest remained limited. Everything began to change during the second half of the 20th century. As public trust in institutions declined, Americans became increasingly interested in organizations operating behind closed doors. The Vietnam War, the Watergate scandal, the Cold War, government secrecy, corporate influence, investigative journalism flourished. Citizens began asking more questions about how power operated. Bohemian Grove naturally attracted attention. Here was a place where presidents, cabinet officials, military officers, corporate executives, judges, scientists, and media leaders gathered every summer. Even if nothing unusual occurred, the gathering itself appeared remarkable. One of the first questions reporters asked was simple: what actually happens inside? Former members generally offered similar descriptions. The days begin quietly. Breakfast is served at individual camps. Members stroll beneath the redwoods. Some fish. Others hike. Many simply relax and talk. Afternoons often include lectures. Known informally as Lakeside Talks, these presentations feature invited speakers discussing history, science, economics, international affairs, technology, and other important topics. Over the years, respected scholars, military leaders, diplomats, and government officials have delivered these talks. Importantly, the presentations themselves are not secret. The content varies from year to year. Some former speakers have later discussed their appearances publicly. The talks resemble those held at universities, conferences, or leadership retreats. In the evenings, members gather for concerts, theatrical productions, camp dinners, informal conversations, and social activities. Many former attendees insist that business discussions are actively discouraged. They point again to the club's unofficial motto: "Weaving spiders come not here." The phrase serves as a reminder to leave professional responsibilities outside the grove. Whether every member always follows that ideal remains impossible to verify. Human nature suggests that conversations among influential individuals naturally touch upon important subjects. Still, the club has consistently maintained that formal business negotiations are not the purpose of the encampment. Critics remain unconvinced. They argue that when leaders from politics, finance, energy, defense, and media spend weeks together in private, influence inevitably occurs. Even casual conversations can shape future relationships. Trust develops. Ideas are exchanged. Partnerships begin. No formal votes are necessary. This distinction lies at the heart of much of the criticism surrounding Bohemian Grove. The issue is often less about secret decisions and more about private access. Who gets invited? Who does not? Who benefits from relationships formed inside the grove? These concerns intensified during the 1970s and 1980s as investigative journalists examined elite social networks more closely. Reporters sought interviews with members. They attempted to photograph the encampment. Some requested permission to attend. The Bohemian Club generally declined. Maintaining privacy remained one of its highest priorities. This refusal often generated additional suspicion. People naturally wonder about activities they cannot observe. Another issue involved the Grove's membership policies. For much of its history, membership was limited to men. This reflected traditions common among many private clubs founded during the 19th century. By the late 20th century, however, such policies attracted increasing criticism. Civil rights organizations argued that exclusive clubs attended by influential public officials reinforced unequal access to professional opportunities. Several legal challenges arose concerning gender discrimination and employment practices connected to private clubs. Over time, changing social expectations affected many long-established organizations, including those with traditions similar to Bohemian Grove. The debates reflected broader societal changes rather than issues unique to one club. Environmental concerns also emerged. The Grove occupies one of the world's most beautiful redwood forests. Conservation groups closely monitored activities affecting the surrounding ecosystem. The Bohemian Club responded by emphasizing stewardship of the property. Many of the ancient trees remain carefully protected. Walking through the Grove today, visitors permitted access at certain times of the year often remark upon the remarkable condition of the forest. Preserving the redwoods has become an important part of the club's identity. Perhaps the most significant turning point in public awareness came with advances in technology. Portable video cameras, satellite television, the Internet. For generations, Bohemian Grove had existed largely beyond public view. Suddenly, images began circulating worldwide. Photographs of the giant owl, footage of the Cremation of Care ceremony, interviews with critics, documentaries, news reports. Millions of people who had never heard of the Grove suddenly encountered dramatic images without historical context. Many viewers reached conclusions based solely upon appearance. A nighttime ceremony, robes, torches, ancient trees, a giant owl. Without understanding the theatrical traditions behind the event, some interpreted the imagery very differently from club members. This illustrates an important principle in historical research. Context matters. The same photograph can support very different interpretations depending upon what information accompanies it. During the 1990s and early 2000s, several journalists and commentators produced investigations into Bohemian Grove. Some approached the subject cautiously, examining historical documents, interviewing former members, reviewing club publications. Others emphasized sensational claims designed to attract attention. The rise of the Internet accelerated this process dramatically. Articles, videos, discussion forums, and later, social media allowed theories to spread globally within hours. Some claims rested upon documented facts. Others expanded far beyond available evidence. Bohemian Grove gradually became associated with a growing collection of conspiracy theories involving secret governments, hidden world control, occult organizations, and global elites. Many of these theories borrowed elements from older narratives involving the Illuminati, Freemasonry, or other secret societies. Historians generally caution against treating such claims as established fact without credible supporting evidence. That does not mean every criticism lacks merit. Private gatherings involving influential individuals naturally deserve thoughtful public discussion. Questions about transparency, networking, and access remain legitimate topics of debate. The challenge lies in separating evidence-based criticism from unsupported speculation. Doing so requires careful examination of primary sources, historical records, and first-hand accounts. The more sensational the claim, the stronger the evidence should be. As we continue exploring Bohemian Grove, this principle becomes increasingly important. Because the next chapter examines the extraordinary conspiracy theories that transformed a private summer retreat into one of the world's most discussed symbols of hidden power. Some claims contain kernels of historical truth. Others venture into territory where evidence becomes remarkably thin. Understanding the difference is essential to understanding the real story behind Bohemian Grove. Part 5. Few private organizations have inspired as many conspiracy theories as Bohemian Grove. For decades, the annual gathering has been described as everything from a harmless summer retreat to the secret headquarters of a hidden world government. Entire books have been written about it. Thousands of internet videos have analyzed it. Countless articles have claimed to reveal what really happens beneath the redwood trees. The extraordinary range of these claims raises an important question. Why has Bohemian Grove attracted so much speculation? The answer begins with a simple observation. People are naturally curious about places they cannot enter. Privacy often creates mystery. Mystery encourages imagination. And imagination sometimes produces stories far removed from documented reality. Throughout history, exclusive organizations have inspired similar speculation. The Freemasons, the Knights Templar, Skull and Bones, the Illuminati. Whenever influential people meet privately, questions inevitably follow. Bohemian Grove fits this pattern almost perfectly. It combines three ingredients that naturally fuel public fascination: powerful attendees, restricted access, unusual traditions. For some observers, those three elements are enough to suggest hidden activity. For historians, however, they simply mark the beginning of an investigation. One of the most common claims surrounding Bohemian Grove is that major political decisions are secretly made there. Supporters of this theory argue that presidents, cabinet officials, military leaders, and corporate executives gather specifically to coordinate policy outside public scrutiny. Documented evidence paints a more complicated picture. There is no credible historical evidence that Bohemian Grove functions as a formal governing body. No official votes occur. No public records indicate that laws are drafted or government decisions finalized during the encampment. At the same time, it would also be unrealistic to assume that influential individuals never discuss important issues while spending days together. Friendships formed in informal settings can certainly influence future cooperation. Networking has always played an important role in politics, business, and diplomacy. The question is one of degree. Casual conversations differ greatly from secret government planning. Distinguishing between those possibilities requires evidence. Another frequently repeated claim concerns the Cremation of Care ceremony. Photographs of hooded figures carrying torches beside a giant owl have circulated around the world. To those unfamiliar with the event, the ceremony appears mysterious. Some have described it as a cult, others as pagan, still others as evidence of secret religious practices. Historical records tell a different story. The ceremony has been described in club publications for decades. Scripts have been published. Former participants have discussed it openly. The performance resembles a theatrical pageant far more than a religious ritual. Actors perform assigned roles. Music accompanies the production. The symbolic burning of care represents setting aside the burdens of everyday life, while viewers remain free to interpret symbolism differently. No credible evidence has demonstrated that the ceremony involves worship of ancient deities or supernatural practices. Perhaps the most persistent allegation involves the idea of a new world order. According to this theory, influential elites secretly coordinate world events through organizations such as Bohemian Grove, the Bilderberg Group, and other private meetings. These claims often combine unrelated organizations into a single narrative. Historians caution that such theories typically rely upon association rather than documentation. Simply because two influential people attend the same gathering does not establish coordinated control over world affairs. Complex historical events usually involve many independent factors rather than one hidden source. Another recurring theme concerns the Illuminati. Originally, the Illuminati referred to a small Enlightenment-era organization founded in Bavaria in 1776. It existed for only a relatively short period before being suppressed. Modern conspiracy theories often use the word Illuminati very differently. It has become a general label for alleged hidden elites controlling global events. Despite frequent internet claims, there is no documented historical connection between the 18th century Bavarian Illuminati and Bohemian Grove. The association appears to arise primarily through later popular culture and conspiracy literature. The internet has greatly amplified these narratives. Videos frequently combine dramatic music, dark imagery, selective quotations, and unrelated historical events. Viewed together, they can create a compelling story. Compelling, however, does not necessarily mean accurate. One important principle of historical research is source evaluation. Where did a claim originate? Can it be independently verified? Do multiple reliable sources support it? Has the evidence been examined critically? These questions help distinguish investigation from speculation. One documented historical event often mentioned in discussions of Bohemian Grove concerns the Manhattan Project. As noted earlier, historian accounts indicate that important introductions involving J. Robert Oppenheimer occurred in connection with the Grove during 1942. This example demonstrates that influential networking certainly took place. It does not, however, demonstrate that the atomic bomb project itself was secretly directed from the Grove. The distinction matters. Networking is documented. Broader claims require broader evidence. Another fascinating aspect of Bohemian Grove involves psychology. Humans naturally seek patterns. When several prominent individuals appear together repeatedly, our minds instinctively search for hidden connections. Psychologists refer to this tendency as pattern recognition. Most of the time, it serves us well. Occasionally, however, we connect unrelated events. This does not mean curiosity is misplaced. Only that careful evidence must accompany interpretation. Historians often remind students of another important principle. Absence of evidence is not automatically evidence of absence. But neither is it evidence of presence. Unknown details should remain unknown, rather than filled with speculation. Responsible historical inquiry accepts uncertainty where documentation remains incomplete. That approach may appear less exciting than elaborate conspiracy theories. Yet it generally produces more reliable conclusions. Bohemian Grove illustrates this challenge perfectly. Some aspects of its history are well documented. The founding of the Bohemian Club, its annual encampments, its theatrical traditions, its prominent membership. Other questions remain more difficult to answer. Exactly what conversations occurred during private dinners? How have friendships formed that influenced later events? To what extent do informal discussions affect public policy? Reasonable people may disagree. What matters is distinguishing informed inference from unsupported certainty. As we continue our exploration, we now turn from theories to people. Who actually attended Bohemian Grove? Which presidents walked beneath the redwoods? Which business leaders became members? And what documented historical events connect these individuals to one of America's most exclusive private retreats? Those answers reveal a remarkable chapter in the history of American leadership. Part 6. One of the primary reasons Bohemian Grove continues attracting public attention is not its ceremonies, nor its location, nor even its secrecy. It is the people who have attended. Over more than a century, the guest lists and membership rolls have included an extraordinary collection of influential figures from American public life. Presidents, cabinet officials, military commanders, Supreme Court justices, scientists, business executives, artists, authors, musicians, university presidents. Their presence has transformed what might otherwise be an obscure private club into a subject of worldwide interest. It is important, however, to distinguish between members, guests, and occasional visitors. Not everyone who has attended Bohemian Grove became a member. Some were invited to give speeches. Others visited only once. Still others participated regularly for decades. Historical records do not always provide complete attendance lists because the Bohemian Club has traditionally kept many internal records private. Nevertheless, enough documentation exists to identify numerous prominent attendees. Among the most frequently mentioned are presidents of the United States. Herbert Hoover was a longtime member of the Bohemian Club. Before becoming president, Hoover had established a distinguished reputation as an engineer, humanitarian, and public servant. He attended the Grove on multiple occasions and maintained friendships within the organization for many years. Another well-known attendee was Dwight D. Eisenhower. The celebrated World War II general and later President of the United States visited the Grove during his distinguished career. Like many public figures of his era, he participated in numerous private organizations throughout his life. Richard Nixon also attended Bohemian Grove before becoming president. Ironically, Nixon later made remarks, recorded on the White House tapes, expressing a distinctly negative opinion about aspects of the encampment. His comments have often been quoted because they illustrate an important point. Attendance did not necessarily imply admiration for every aspect of the Grove. People participated for different reasons. Some enjoyed the atmosphere. Others valued the networking. Still others simply accepted invitations from longtime friends. Ronald Reagan attended before his presidency. His presence has frequently been cited because of his later political prominence. As with other attendees, however, no credible evidence suggests that his major policy decisions were made at the Grove. His participation reflected membership in a long-established social tradition rather than documented governmental planning. Beyond presidents, the Grove attracted many cabinet officials, diplomats, and military leaders. Throughout the 20th century, senior officers from the Army, Navy, and Air Force attended various encampments. Their presence reflected both personal friendships and the club's expanding reputation among influential Americans. Business leaders formed another significant group. Executives from banking, manufacturing, energy, transportation, publishing, and later technology became regular participants. Again, this should not be surprising. Exclusive social clubs have long attracted successful professionals seeking opportunities to relax among peers. One of the Grove's most distinctive features has always been the mixture of professions. Artists might share meals with scientists. Authors might perform for military officers. Corporate executives might attend lectures by historians. The founders intended exactly this kind of intellectual diversity. Although the club gradually became associated with wealth and influence, its artistic traditions never disappeared. Music remained central to the encampment. Theater flourished. Poetry readings continued. Many members regarded these performances as the true heart of the Grove. Perhaps the most historically significant documented connection involving Bohemian Grove concerns the development of the Manhattan Project. During the summer of 1942, physicist Ernest Lawrence, himself associated with the Bohemian Club, reportedly introduced J. Robert Oppenheimer to senior military and government officials while at the Grove. Those conversations helped strengthen confidence in Oppenheimer's leadership abilities. Soon afterward, he became the scientific director of the Manhattan Project. Historians generally accept that these introductions occurred. The Grove provided an opportunity for influential individuals to become acquainted in an informal setting. However, historians are equally careful to note what did not happen. The Manhattan Project itself was not secretly directed from Bohemian Grove. The project developed through formal military, scientific, and governmental channels. The Grove served as a place where important people met, not where official policy was determined. This distinction illustrates why historical precision matters. Networking is not the same as governance. Relationships are not the same as conspiracies. Understanding these differences helps separate documented history from speculation. Another recurring feature of the Grove has been the Lakeside Talks. These lectures have featured distinguished speakers discussing subjects ranging from economics and international affairs to science, history, technology, and national security. Former speakers have included respected scholars, diplomats, military officers, and public officials. Unlike conspiracy theories suggesting secret planning sessions, these presentations generally resemble educational lectures given at universities or leadership conferences. Many attendees describe them as one of the most intellectually rewarding aspects of the encampment. The talks encourage discussion rather than decision-making. Of course, discussion itself can be influential. Ideas exchanged among thoughtful individuals often shape future thinking. That influence, however, differs fundamentally from secret government control. One reason Bohemian Grove remains difficult to evaluate is the nature of private conversation. No historian can reconstruct every discussion held around every campfire across more than 100 years. Nor should they attempt to speculate beyond available evidence. Responsible history recognizes both what is known and what remains unknowable. This principle becomes especially important when examining claims involving hidden influence. Several historians have observed that informal relationships often affect political life. University classmates become future presidents. Military officers maintain lifelong friendships. Business leaders develop trust through shared experiences. Such networks exist throughout society. Bohemian Grove represents one example among many. Its uniqueness lies primarily in the remarkable concentration of influential individuals gathered within one location. The question has never been whether networking occurs. It almost certainly does. The real question concerns its significance. Does friendship translate into coordinated action? Sometimes. Does it create opportunities? Certainly. Does it prove the existence of hidden government? No credible historical evidence supports that conclusion. Another interesting aspect of the Grove involves the diversity of viewpoints represented. Members have included Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals, military leaders and anti-war advocates, business executives and artists. This diversity challenges simplistic portrayals of the organization as a unified political movement. Like most large organizations, it has contained individuals with widely differing beliefs. That complexity often disappears in popular discussions. Reality is usually less dramatic and more complicated. As Bohemian Grove became better known, journalists, activists, and curious members of the public increasingly attempted to enter the property. Some requested permission. Others sought interviews. A few attempted something far more controversial. They entered the Grove without authorization. Those actions would produce some of the most widely viewed footage ever recorded inside Bohemian Grove, and dramatically increase public debate about one of America's most private organizations. Part 7. For more than 100 years, very few people outside the Bohemian Club had ever seen what happened inside Bohemian Grove. Descriptions came from members, occasional newspaper reports, club publications, and scattered historical photographs. The public knew the Grove existed, but little else. That changed dramatically near the end of the 20th century. A handful of journalists and activists decided they no longer wanted to rely on second-hand accounts. Instead, they attempted to see the Grove for themselves. Their investigations would bring Bohemian Grove into the international spotlight. One of the earliest investigative efforts came from reporters seeking interviews with current and former members. Some participants agreed to speak. Most did not. The Bohemian Club consistently emphasized privacy. Members were expected to respect one another's confidentiality. As a result, detailed first-hand accounts remained relatively rare. Then came hidden cameras. Portable video equipment had become smaller, lighter, easier to conceal. For investigative journalists, new technology created opportunities that had not existed only a decade earlier. Perhaps the most widely discussed incident occurred in July of 2000. Broadcaster Alex Jones secretly entered Bohemian Grove with cameraman Mike Hansen. Using concealed video equipment, they recorded portions of the annual Cremation of Care ceremony. The footage was later released publicly. For millions of viewers, it was the first time they had ever seen images from inside the grove. The video immediately generated enormous attention. Supporters of Jones argued that the recording exposed hidden activities occurring behind closed doors. Critics responded that the footage showed exactly what the Bohemian Club had long described: a theatrical ceremony, complete with costumes, music, and symbolism. The same images produced two dramatically different interpretations. One emphasizing secrecy, the other emphasizing context. This illustrates how prior beliefs often shape interpretation. People rarely view evidence in complete isolation. Instead, they interpret new information through existing assumptions. The Bohemian Club strongly criticized the unauthorized entry. From the club's perspective, private property had been entered without permission. Members argued that even public figures deserve places where they can gather privately. Many legal scholars agreed that privacy rights apply even to influential individuals. Others argued that when powerful leaders meet together, investigative journalism serves an important public function. The debate reflected broader tensions between transparency and privacy. Neither principle is absolute. Another investigative effort came through books written by historians and journalists. Some approached the subject carefully, consulting archival materials, interviewing former members, comparing independent sources. Others focused primarily on sensational claims. Readers therefore encounter widely varying portrayals of Bohemian Grove depending upon the author's methodology. This highlights another important lesson. Not every published source carries equal historical weight. Professional historians generally distinguish between primary sources, contemporary documents, eyewitness testimony, and later speculation. The closer evidence stands to the original event, the greater its historical value tends to be. One frequently cited primary source comes from former members themselves. Many have described the Grove as a place devoted largely to recreation, music, friendship, nature, and conversation. Several acknowledged that important political figures naturally interacted there. Few described formal decision-making. Others admitted that valuable professional relationships certainly developed. These accounts generally support a more moderate picture than either enthusiastic supporters or determined critics sometimes present. Public protests also became increasingly common. Beginning in the latter part of the 20th century, demonstrators gathered outside the Grove during annual encampments. Some protested economic inequality. Others opposed environmental policies. Still others objected to what they viewed as excessive influence enjoyed by wealthy elites. The demonstrations remained largely peaceful. They reflected broader public concerns regarding power, privilege, and access. Interestingly, many protesters focused less upon alleged conspiracies than upon visible inequality. They questioned whether exclusive gatherings of influential individuals undermine democratic ideals. This remains an active public debate extending far beyond Bohemian Grove itself. Questions about lobbying, campaign finance, corporate influence, and political access continue shaping modern democracies around the world. Bohemian Grove often serves as a symbol within these broader discussions. Whether fairly or unfairly depends upon one's perspective. The rise of the internet transformed the conversation even further. Previously, information spread slowly. Books required years to publish. Television documentaries reached limited audiences. Online platforms changed everything. Photographs, videos, articles, personal opinions, historical documents, conspiracy theories. Accurate information and misinformation began circulating together at unprecedented speed. One person's speculation quickly became another person's accepted fact. Without careful source evaluation, separating the two became increasingly difficult. Some internet discussions linked Bohemian Grove with unrelated historical events. Financial crises, wars, Government decisions. Natural disasters. In many cases, the only connection involved the fact that someone associated with those events had once attended the grove. Historians caution against this type of reasoning. Shared membership alone does not establish causation. Complex historical events rarely originate from a single private meeting. Reality tends to involve multiple overlapping factors rather than one hidden explanation. Another recurring claim suggests that media organizations deliberately ignore Bohemian Grove. Historical evidence does not support this assertion. Major newspapers including the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Los Angeles Times, and numerous magazines have published articles about the Grove over many decades. Television documentaries have also examined the subject. The challenge has generally involved limited access rather than deliberate silence. Restricted access naturally limits available reporting. Despite decades of investigation, several conclusions remain reasonably well supported. Bohemian Grove unquestionably exists. The Bohemian Club owns and operates it. Many influential individuals have attended. The Cremation of Care ceremony is real. The Grove hosts lectures, performances, concerts, and social activities. Beyond those documented facts, interpretations begin to diverge. How influential are conversations held there? How much networking affects later events? How significant are personal relationships formed beneath the redwoods? These questions remain difficult to answer precisely. Perhaps that uncertainty explains why Bohemian Grove continues attracting attention generation after generation. Some mysteries persist not because evidence is hidden, but because human relationships themselves resist simple explanation. In the next chapter, we step back from individual claims and ask a broader question. Why are people so fascinated by secret societies? Why do organizations like Bohemian Grove, the Freemasons, Skull and Bones, and the Illuminati capture the public imagination so completely? The answer may reveal as much about human psychology as it does about the organizations themselves. Part 8. Throughout history, human beings have always been fascinated by secrets. Hidden rooms. Lost manuscripts. Secret codes. Ancient temples. Private societies. The unknown captures our imagination in ways that ordinary life rarely can. Bohemian Grove is only one example of a much older phenomenon. Every generation has had its own mysterious organizations. Some were real. Others existed largely in legend. Still others became far more famous because of the myths surrounding them than because of their actual activities. Why does this happen? Why are people so drawn to secret societies? Psychologists suggest that part of the answer lies in how the human brain evolved. Our ancestors survived by recognizing patterns, detecting hidden dangers, predicting the intentions of others. Missing a real threat could be fatal. Seeing a threat where none existed was usually far less costly. As a result, humans naturally look for hidden connections. Sometimes those connections are real. Sometimes they are not. This tendency becomes especially powerful when dealing with powerful individuals. People naturally assume that important events must have important causes. If something dramatic happens, a financial crisis, a war, a political upheaval, many instinctively search for a hidden group directing events from behind the scenes. The idea that history unfolds through secret planning often feels more satisfying than accepting that many events result from countless independent decisions, accidents, and unforeseen circumstances. Historians frequently encounter this pattern. Major historical events rarely have a single cause. Instead, they emerge from economics, politics, culture, technology, geography, human personalities, chance. Reality is usually far more complicated than conspiracy theories suggest. Nevertheless, secret societies have certainly existed. Some continue to exist today. One of the oldest and best-known examples is Freemasonry. Originating from medieval stonemasons' guilds, Freemasonry gradually evolved into a worldwide fraternal organization emphasizing charity, moral development, and symbolism. Its private ceremonies have inspired centuries of speculation. Although historians have extensively documented its history, myths about hidden political control continue to circulate. Another famous organization is Skull and Bones at Yale University. Founded in 1832, it has counted presidents, judges, business leaders, and diplomats among its members. Because membership remains private, public curiosity has never disappeared. Like Bohemian Grove, its exclusivity has generated countless rumors. The Rosicrucians provide another example. Emerging in Europe during the 17th century, Rosicrucian writings described a mystical brotherhood devoted to wisdom and spiritual knowledge. Whether an organized society initially existed remains debated among historians. Yet the legend profoundly influenced later esoteric traditions. Then there is the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. Founded in 19th century Britain, it attracted writers, artists, and occult scholars interested in ceremonial magic, symbolism, and mystical philosophy. Unlike many conspiracy narratives, its history has been extensively documented through surviving records. Perhaps no name has generated more speculation than the Illuminati. The historical Bavarian Illuminati existed only briefly during the late 18th century. It sought Enlightenment reforms and opposed superstition and authoritarian rule. Government suppression quickly ended the organization. Yet its name survived. Over time, popular culture transformed the Illuminati into a symbol representing hidden global power. Modern conspiracy theories often use the term without any connection to the historical organization. Bohemian Grove became associated with many of these broader narratives. Not because evidence linked it directly to the original Illuminati, but because it fit a familiar pattern. Private membership, influential attendees, limited public access. The combination proved irresistible to storytellers. Modern technology amplified this fascination enormously. Social media allows ideas to spread globally within minutes. A dramatic photograph, a short video clip, an emotional headline. These often travel much faster than careful historical analysis. Psychologists have identified another important factor. People often experience discomfort when confronted with uncertainty. Unanswered questions leave us uneasy. Conspiracy theories sometimes provide simple, emotionally satisfying explanations for complex events. Instead of accepting uncertainty, they offer certainty, even when evidence remains limited. Responsible historical inquiry takes a different approach. It accepts that some questions remain unresolved. Historians become comfortable saying, "We do not know." Although less dramatic, this approach generally produces more reliable conclusions. Bohemian Grove illustrates this perfectly. Certain facts are well established. The Grove exists. The Bohemian Club owns it. Annual encampments occur. Influential people have attended. The Cremation of Care ceremony is real. Everything beyond those documented facts requires increasingly careful evaluation. Another reason secret societies fascinate us involves storytelling itself. Mysteries make compelling narratives. A hidden meeting deep within an ancient forest immediately captures attention. Writers understand this instinctively. Novelists, filmmakers, documentary producers. The image of powerful individuals gathering beneath towering redwoods almost seems designed for fiction. Reality, however, often proves less dramatic. Private organizations usually spend far more time discussing ordinary matters than extraordinary ones. Meals, friendships, entertainment, family, personal interests. Even highly influential people remain ordinary human beings much of the time. This perspective is sometimes overlooked. Bohemian Grove has undoubtedly hosted remarkable individuals. Presidents, scientists, military leaders, corporate executives. Yet they also sang songs, performed comedy sketches, listened to orchestras, walked forest trails, shared stories around campfires. Those quieter moments rarely appear in sensational accounts, perhaps because they seem less mysterious. Still, they form an important part of the Grove's documented history. As historians examine organizations like Bohemian Grove, they often emphasize proportionality. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. When evidence remains incomplete, conclusions should remain tentative. This principle protects both historical accuracy and intellectual honesty. After more than 150 years, Bohemian Grove continues existing. Its traditions evolve. Its membership changes. Public interest remains remarkably strong. Some continue viewing it as an innocent private retreat. Others see troubling concentrations of influence. Most likely, elements of truth exist within both perspectives. Private networking certainly occurs. Documented evidence of secret world government does not. Reality often occupies the space between extremes. As our journey nears its conclusion, one final question remains. What lasting place does Bohemian Grove occupy in American history? Beyond the rumors. Beyond the conspiracy theories. Beyond the mystery. What does its story ultimately teach us about power, privacy, influence, and the enduring relationship between public curiosity and private institutions? That is where our exploration now ends. Part 9. More than 150 years have passed since a small group of journalists, artists, and musicians gathered in San Francisco to form what would become the Bohemian Club. What began as a social organization for creative individuals gradually evolved into one of the most exclusive private clubs in America. Its annual retreat beneath the towering redwoods became known around the world. Not because of its music. Not because of its theater. Not because of its natural beauty. But because of the people who attended. Presidents. Cabinet members. Military commanders. Corporate executives. Scientists. Judges. Authors. Artists. Few private organizations have brought together such a wide variety of influential individuals for so many decades. That alone makes Bohemian Grove historically significant. The question is, how significant? Throughout this documentary, one theme has appeared repeatedly: the difference between privacy and secrecy. The two words are often treated as though they mean the same thing. They do not. Privacy means limiting access to personal activities. Families expect privacy in their homes. Businesses protect confidential information. Doctors safeguard patient records. Private organizations establish membership rules. These practices are generally accepted within democratic societies. Secrecy implies something different: the deliberate concealment of actions that affect others. Hidden agreements. Undisclosed decision-making. Activities intentionally kept from public oversight. The distinction matters. Bohemian Grove has consistently described itself as a private retreat. Critics have often argued that gatherings involving powerful public figures deserve greater transparency. Both perspectives raise legitimate questions. Where should privacy end? Where should accountability begin? Modern democracies continue debating these issues. Lobbying organizations. Political fundraisers. Private conferences. Think tanks. Business summits. Many involve influential people meeting outside public view. Bohemian Grove represents one example within this much larger discussion. Historians generally caution against viewing the Grove in isolation. Power rarely operates through a single organization. Instead, influence spreads across countless formal and informal relationships. Universities. Professional associations. Political parties. business networks, charitable foundations, international conferences, friendships formed over decades. Human society functions through connections. Bohemian Grove contributes to those connections. It does not exclusively define them. Another important observation concerns symbolism. Much of Bohemian Grove's public image has been shaped by photographs. The giant owl, torchlit ceremonies, ancient redwoods. These images possess undeniable dramatic power. Visual symbolism often influences public perception more strongly than written explanations. Yet symbols are inherently open to interpretation. One person sees a theatrical production. Another sees occult imagery. A third sees little more than elaborate pageantry. Understanding symbolism requires historical context. Without it, misunderstandings become almost inevitable. This challenge extends far beyond Bohemian Grove. Throughout history, symbols have repeatedly acquired meanings never intended by their creators. The internet has accelerated this process enormously. Images circulate detached from their original explanations. Viewers supply interpretations based upon their own beliefs. Responsible historical research attempts to reconnect symbols with documented evidence. Not every mystery requires a hidden explanation. Sometimes traditions remain exactly what participants say they are. Sometimes they do not. The task of the historian is determining which possibility best fits the available evidence. Bohemian Grove has also become a case study in modern information culture. Before the internet, information moved slowly. Books underwent editorial review. Newspapers employed fact-checkers. Today, anyone can publish almost instantly. This democratization of information brings enormous benefits. It also creates new challenges. Accurate research now competes directly with speculation. Photographs compete with fabricated images. Primary sources compete with anonymous online claims. For subjects like Bohemian Grove, careful source evaluation becomes more important than ever. Perhaps one of the Grove's greatest historical contributions has been unintended. It has encouraged broader public discussion about power itself. How should influential people interact? Should private citizens who later become public officials surrender all expectations of privacy? Can meaningful friendships exist without public suspicion? Do exclusive organizations strengthen leadership? Or weaken democratic trust? Reasonable people answer these questions differently. The discussions themselves remain valuable because they force society to examine the balance between freedom and accountability. Another remarkable aspect of Bohemian Grove is its longevity. Many organizations disappear within decades. The Bohemian Club has endured for more than a century and a half. Wars, economic depressions, technological revolutions, political upheavals, social change. Through it all, the annual encampment has continued. Membership evolved. Traditions adapted. Yet the fundamental idea remained. A temporary retreat beneath ancient redwoods where members leave ordinary responsibilities behind. Whether one views the tradition positively or negatively often depends upon broader views concerning elite institutions. Some emphasize friendship and recreation. Others emphasize unequal access and influence. History suggests that both perspectives contain elements worthy of consideration. The challenge lies in resisting extremes. Portraying Bohemian Grove as either completely innocent or all-powerful oversimplifies a far more complex reality. The truth, as so often happens, appears somewhere in between. Influence undoubtedly exists. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Careful research remains essential. Only one chapter remains. After exploring the history, traditions, membership, symbolism, investigations, and controversies surrounding Bohemian Grove, we return to the broader question that has fascinated generations. Why does this place continue capturing the public imagination? And what does its enduring mystery reveal? Not only about one private organization, but about ourselves? Part 10. Walk once more beneath the towering redwoods. Listen carefully. The forest itself tells no secrets. The ancient trees have stood here for centuries. Long before the Bohemian Club existed. Long before presidents visited. Long before cameras, newspapers, or the internet. They have witnessed generations come and go. Empires have risen. Wars have been fought. Technology has transformed civilization. Yet the redwoods remain. Silent observers to human history. Perhaps that is one reason Bohemian Grove continues to fascinate people. The setting itself feels timeless. A place where the modern world briefly disappears beneath a canopy of trees that have survived for hundreds, and in some cases thousands, of years. It is an environment that naturally inspires reflection. Throughout this documentary, we have explored the remarkable history of Bohemian Grove. We began with the founding of the Bohemian Club in San Francisco in 1872. A small gathering of journalists, artists, writers, and musicians seeking friendship, creativity, and escape from the pressures of everyday life. We followed the annual camping trips that eventually led to the purchase of the Redwood property in Sonoma County. We watched the organization evolve. Artists were joined by lawyers, industrialists, scientists, military leaders, political figures. Eventually, presidents of the United States. The Grove became one of America's most exclusive private retreats. We examined its traditions, the outdoor theaters, the music, the camp communities, the giant owl, and the famous Cremation of Care ceremony. We explored what those traditions mean to members, and how they have often been interpreted very differently by critics and conspiracy theorists. We looked at documented history, the attendance of influential individuals, the role of networking, the well-documented connection between conversations at the Grove and the introduction of J. Robert Oppenheimer before the Manhattan Project. We also carefully distinguished networking from conspiracy, relationships from secret government, evidence from speculation. Perhaps the most important lesson is this: Bohemian Grove is a real place. Its traditions are real. Its influential membership is real. Its ceremonies are real. Its privacy is real. Beyond those documented facts, interpretation begins. Some observers see harmless pageantry. Others see troubling symbolism. Some regard the Grove as little more than a private social club. Others believe it represents an example of elite influence operating outside public view. These perspectives often reflect broader beliefs about politics, wealth, and power rather than evidence specific to Bohemian Grove itself. History teaches us that exclusive organizations have always existed. Universities, professional societies, military academies, business associations, religious orders, fraternal organizations. Throughout history, influential people have formed private communities. Bohemian Grove belongs within that long tradition. It is unusual because of the prominence of many of its members, not because private organizations themselves are unique. Another enduring lesson concerns the importance of critical thinking. The modern world produces more information than any previous generation could have imagined. Photographs, videos, articles, social media posts, documentaries, books, podcasts. Some are carefully researched. Others are speculative. Some deliberately blur the line between fact and fiction. The responsibility increasingly falls upon each of us to ask questions, to examine sources, to distinguish documented evidence from assumption. That skill extends far beyond Bohemian Grove. It applies to history, science, politics, medicine, every area of modern life. Curiosity remains one of humanity's greatest strengths. But curiosity works best when partnered with evidence. The story of Bohemian Grove also reminds us of something deeply human. People seek community, even those holding positions of great responsibility. Presidents, generals, corporate leaders, scientists, artists. They all look for places where formal titles temporarily fade, where conversations become more personal, where friendships develop, whether one approves of Bohemian Grove or not. That basic human desire remains understandable. At the same time, democratic societies depend upon transparency. Citizens naturally expect accountability from public officials. Balancing legitimate privacy with appropriate public oversight remains one of democracy's ongoing challenges. Bohemian Grove occupies an unusual position at the center of that conversation. Neither entirely public, nor completely hidden. Its story illustrates how difficult that balance can be. Perhaps the Grove's greatest mystery is not what happens inside its gates. Former members have described much of that already. The greater mystery may be why people continue searching for hidden explanations. Why secret societies capture our imagination. Why powerful symbols inspire elaborate stories. Why uncertainty often encourages speculation. These questions tell us as much about ourselves as they do about Bohemian Grove. History is filled with examples where genuine conspiracies have existed. It is equally filled with examples where ordinary events became surrounded by extraordinary myths. The challenge is learning to recognize the difference. Bohemian Grove stands at that intersection. Part history, part tradition, part mystery, part modern legend. As long as influential people continue gathering beneath the redwoods, questions will remain. Journalists will investigate. Historians will research. Critics will criticize. Supporters will defend. The debate will continue. Perhaps that is exactly what should happen. Healthy societies ask questions. Responsible historians seek evidence. Neither blind acceptance nor automatic suspicion serves the pursuit of truth. The search for understanding always continues. In the end, Bohemian Grove reminds us that history is rarely as simple as its legends. Reality is often more complex, more nuanced, and ultimately more interesting than either its strongest defenders or its harshest critics might suggest. The towering redwoods will remain. Another summer gathering will come. New members will arrive. Old traditions will continue. And somewhere beyond the gates, people will continue asking the same question they have asked for more than a century. What really happens inside Bohemian Grove? Perhaps the answer has never been a single secret. Perhaps it has always been a complicated story, waiting to be understood.